What's wrong, James?
I don't know. I really just feel like God is calling me to something.
You know you're not called unless you've been called your entire life, right?
I don't think that's how it works.
Trust me, it is.
I really don't.
No. You have to be called your entire life, and that's the only way it works. There's no other way you can be called.
But I feel like I really feel like I'm being called to something, and I know that.
I don't think you are. You have to be called your entire life.
But Eli, listen, I really believe that God is calling me to something right now.
Maybe we should go find somebody who can help us figure this out.
But I know that this has been happening gradually, Eli. It didn't happen at the beginning of my life. This is a recent development.
Well, there's David. Let's ask him. Hey, David, what do you think a call is?
I think the only way you be called is by God hitting you out of nowhere with it. I've been called.
But I think you're wrong, David. I've been called my entire life. You can't just be called in a single moment.
I think that for me, it was more of just like God started working in me, and He's been working in me, and now I feel like from a while ago, He's just been kind of gradually calling me to something.
Well, I disagree with both of y'all because I think God calls you suddenly and out of nowhere because that was the way God called me. But hey, let's check Orthodox News Network. They'll be able to tell us more about callings.
Okay, let's do it.
And welcome back to Orthodox News Network. Now, we are going to our ground correspondent who has been in the Promised Land for over 40 years, learning and investigating calls from God.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, I've been over here in the Promised Land studying so many people for so many years, and it's been incredible. I've seen so many calls. People like Moses, people like Samuel, people like Jeremiah and Isaiah, Gideon. So many calls, so many people for so many different purposes. And what I've seen is that there have been some immediate calls, but there's also been calls of, more progression, where they didn't know immediately. Also, God calls people to not just be a prophet or, to save His people from a big army, but He also calls His people to do little things like eat lunch with a friend or help a lady across the street. There's little things like this that we can do in all of our lives and every day that God calls us to. Back to you.
Thank you, Corbin, for those insightful stories. Now we're going to hear from world-renowned biblical scholar Timothy Green, who is here to provide insight on the stories we've just heard. Dr. Green?
Thank you, Anna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Can you just explain what the call of God is?
Well, thank you, Anna. That is an excellent question. And, I was actually just recently talking about this with one of my college classes called Perspectives that I'm teaching this semester. So basically, as Christians, we believe that everyone in the community, the Christian community, is called to a specific purpose that God has given to our life. However, in addition to this, we believe that certain members of the community are specifically called to leadership roles. We call these ministry roles. And these can be in a variety of settings, such as intercultural settings where people are doing ministry in cultures that are not their own. These could be in pastoral ministries, worship, leadership, youth ministries, or even children's ministries. There are many different areas that God can call us to.
Awesome. So, how do you know if you're being called?
So, what I've always said is that as long as you're really searching for God's will for your life and you're really seeking that, He often gives confirmation through various other people or events in our lives that really confirm and help guide us in what God is calling us to.
So, you said that you can be called through a certain event. Is there a specific way that God calls people?
That's an excellent question, and one that many people have. There's actually 3 different distinct categories I like to break up calls into, and the first one is a lightning event. So this is where you're going about your Christian walk, and suddenly God speaks very real into a specific moment in your life, and you feel that call to do a specific thing. Maybe you're at a church service or some other event, and you feel God's just speaking to you and calling you to do some kind of ministry. There's also another kind of call where it's something that you've just always known throughout your life. You've always known that God is calling you to some kind of ministry. Mm-hmm. And then a third call is something that is perhaps more recent, but it's also been slowly building up in your life. And so these are the three main categories. And I'd like to specifically say that none of these kinds are any more important than another. Just as God calls us to different ministries, there are different ways that He calls us.
That's so interesting. Thank you. What do you think good practices would be to continue in the journey of a call?
That's a great question. First of all, I would say to stay in the Word of God, the Bible. It's important to be reading and studying that in a formative way as in our lives, as well as to find mentors that can help you stay on track and keep you accountable. Community is very important as a Christian, and especially when we're trying to decipher what God's call is for our life.
Well, thank you so much for that. That's all the time we have left today. Thank you for joining Orthodox News Network. Join us tomorrow for an in-depth story about the life of Abraham and Sarah. Have a good evening.
Wow, I really learned a lot today.
Yeah, God calls us all in different ways.
Yeah, no one's calling is the same because God calls us all differently.
Yeah, and I guess everybody is called, not just ministers, but some people are called to a specific purpose.
It's lunchtime!